Hello and welcome to Sightline. Our guest today is Ms. Ariunfelt, CEO of Airee Felt. So Ariunfelt, thank you for joining us for the second time.
Thank you. I'm really glad to be back.
So last time you joined Sightline was around a year and a half ago, and we covered the topic of green finance and sustainability. And now you are the CEO of Airee Felt, a new wool air purifier startup. So to our audience, could you introduce the concept of your startup and also tell us how you came up with the idea of making air purifier using sheep wool?
Sure. So actually, our team came up with the idea of Airee, a wool air purifier, about half a year ago. We were going to participate in the Greenpreneurs competition of the Global Green Growth Institute. It was an international competition, and we had an idea. And our co-founder, Batmuch, approached me saying he wanted to build an algae air washer. And the algae is attributable to 3/4 of the global oxygen creation. So it was only natural that we had algae in our homes. And so we wanted to incorporate it into our daily lives. While we were talking about the idea, I was basically complaining about my office, saying like whenever I got into the office, my eyes would suddenly get super dry, or because of the humidity issues. I was complaining about that, and he was saying like, let's create an ideal indoor air environment. And we wanted to tackle this issue, saying like, why do we have to have air pollution outside and indoors? Why can we have like clean air indoors when you go into our cars, when you go into the building? Why are we still breathing the same coal-burned, polluted air that we are breathing indoors? So that was our problem, and we wanted to solve that. And the first idea was algae air washes, but then obviously naturally came the idea of air purifiers. And we wanted everything to be super sustainable and zero waste, or at least the waste was biodegradable, because as humans, in environmental ways, we've always lived in a way where we're creating another environmental problem while trying to solve one. So when we're actually trying to protect our health and using air purifiers, we're using plastic synthetic filters, which ends up as pollution that will remain on the earth for thousands of years. And that just doesn't make sense. So why don't we just start breathing clean air by using organic materials and bio-based materials that are naturally found in the environment and in the nature, you know. So first it was wool, and the second part of our device is algae air washer. And then the third part is a humidifier that we're making that actually uses wool as well, and it's a completely new product. And so it's been 5 months since we were established, and so far we have one utility model license, and we have 2 of our products launched. So we have the wool filter, first of all, that can be used for all types of purifiers, and we now have a car cabin filter coming up.
So could you tell us the exact reason why the wool makes an ideal choice to be used for the air filter and air humidifier, and also algae, you're using it to be this air washer?
Yeah, so first of all, there's a lot of science literature that's found that shows that wool filters formaldehyde, which is a very toxic, volatile organic compound, which can actually be carcinogenic, which means if you're exposed to it for a long time, then it may cause cancer. So like wool itself has also some chemical characteristics that absorb these compounds and also filters dust like the PM 2.5. And so if you can, we tested like over 10, 20 types of wool and wool processing using many different techniques. And we tried to find the best combination of that brings out dust and volatile organic compound filtration. And so the first of it is that a lot of the PM 2.5 dust that we're saying is most lethal to health, those pollutants are actually anion and cations, so which means it has a negative charge or a positive charge. And so if the wool has a negative charge, it will attract the positive ions, for instance. So it will, in that way, it filters out the dust particles, the tiny parts, as well as through mechanical filtration. So if we can create a dense enough material where the dust doesn't come out on the other side, then our purpose is fulfilled. So we've done multiple experiments to just come up with the ideal and optimal version of that filter. And on the other hand, wool is extremely affordable, especially in Mongolia's case, where some are even discarded as waste. You know, so we would rather export it and try to make it a product and develop it into a product where many people in the world can replace synthetic filters with organic ones.
So how about algae, and how does it make an ideal choice for air washer? And also, actually, what is an air washer? What does it exactly do?
Yeah, so it's actually like a vacuum cleaner. You can just think about it as the air goes in, and then it's washed, and then it comes out fine. So basically, the algae uses photosynthesis. It's a very normal process that plants just, you know, make. They eat or consume CO2 and then produce oxygen, you know. So for them, CO2, which we breathe out, is food. And so the algae that we're developing, we actually got some of it from America, and we're developing it in our lab. And the algae is equal to, produces the same amount of oxygen as 30 houseplants, which is very efficient as a process. And if you think about it, like 75%, over 70% of the world is covered by oceans, and then most of the oxygen comes from coral reefs and algae. So like if you can use algae indoors, then it would be much more efficient than just normal houseplants.
Like 30 times more.
Oh yeah. Yes, exactly. So it makes sense. And then so we wanted to use the carbon that comes from some carbon from the PM 2.5 because these small dust contains lots of various different types of chemicals, and one of them is carbon. And we want to use that, sequester them, and use some of the wool as well as a source of carbon to the algae, and it will consume the CO2 as well as some viruses and bacteria as well, and purify the air in general. As for the wool humidifier, it was another idea that we came up with while developing our purifier. So the humidifier that I had in my office.
It has just got water, right?
Yeah. And then I used to put essential oil in it, and then it would like smell. I could smell it. So I thought the humidifier was working, but then I couldn't. It still felt dry for some reason, so I didn't really get it. And when I started learning about the science, apparently because these small humidifiers produce a lot of large bubbles, it just like poofs up and then it falls down instantly. So you have to buy a really expensive sort of humidifier for it to produce very tiny particles, so it actually evaporates into the air and humidifies the entire indoor air. But then I didn't have that. And
so you made it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So when we talk about air pollution, we tend to focus more on the outdoor air, not the indoor air. Could you tell us, like, what are the benefits of actually purifying the indoor air?
According to the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, indoor air is on average 2 to 5 times worse than the outdoors. And
So
it can be up to 100 times worse. And it's extremely worrisome because, first of all, Indoor air, there's external sources. So the outdoor air is seeping into buildings through some of the where the heat losses are happening. So through those small cracks or whatever,
Or just
that
window.
can come in. Yes, or windows. There's no way of using natural ventilation in Mongolia in the winter, you know. So on one hand, there's external sources, and on the other hand, there's indoor sources as well. So if even when you're cooking, using cleaning products, whatever, the paint and even the building itself, the building materials itself emit some sort of pollutants. So for instance, with wool, we're seeing that it's very effective with oily substances and as well as odor. So like if you have pets or if there's cigarette smokers, then it's really helpful to have the wool filter inside and filter that. And indoor air is actually worse for people in the Gear district. And I really want to stress this because when you're burning coal, in the first 20-30 minutes when the fire is just starting up, it emits a lot of fine dust, the PM 2.5 that we're talking about. So that fine dust is due to incomplete combustion. So there's not enough oxygen and it's just starting to fire up, and that in that period there's a lot of dust coming out, and it's really bad for children. Until 2 or 3, your lungs are still developing, and it's very important that you're not exposed to such pollutants in the beginning. And there's even studies by UNICEF Mongolia saying that Ulaanbaatar children have 40% less lung capacity than children that
Living in
are
countryside?
raised in the countryside. Yeah,
40%.
yeah, and that's an immense number. It's almost half, especially if you're burning fuel indoors. You have to have air purifiers.
This Airee wool air filter, can you use it like with other kind of air purifiers if you already have air purifier at your home?
The filters were created in a way that it can suit all air purifiers except the cylinder-shaped ones. We made the filter so that it could fit most of the models and be cut in different sizes and shapes, you know, so that it was accessible for everyone and it was as affordable as it could be.
It's a great news. So could you elaborate on the process of making the your products? So what kind of professionals worked in the design and manufacturing of those products?
Yeah, so when we started with Greenpreneurs, we had a product designer who's now making our humidifier and algae models as well. And we have an IT guy who also works on the electronic sides of things. So he does a lot of things. He does hardware and software. And so he's helping us develop the product outside. And as I said, my co-founder is a biotechnologist and a biochemist. So these three are mainly in charge of developing the product and making it better. And then we're trying to make it a very lean manufacturing process. So we're ordering as much as we can in China, and the rest of it, the stuff that we can produce in Mongolia.
Thank you. So I think also like many of people, many like other people also like think that if I live in an apartment at a much higher floor, they would get much fresh air. So we don't need any like air purifiers. But now when we're talking to you, then I understand that it was not true. So what would you say like to our audience about the air purifiers, and also how much like square meters does it filter, does it purify?
So our purifier device is for 35 to 40 square meter rooms. And so ideally it would be best for every room. And
To have one in each room.
yeah,
you mean?
yeah. So we're actually making the three products in a way that it can be placed separately in different rooms, or stacked on top of each other and still work as well. So the electric wiring is being done that way. We only have the air purifier device right now. We're still developing the Algae air washer and the humidifier, and we hope to have the humidifier by around May and the Algae air washer by September. As for your previous question with apartments, I can also speak from personal experience because I actually live in a part of the city where it's quite high up in the mountains and on the 16th floor. Because my room is located on the exact edge of the apartment building, I change my wallpaper every summer. You see a lot of like dust that I didn't realize it had accumulated, but it's already, you know, like it's slowly building up there. And so you understand that actually that is coming in and you are breathing some of it, you know. Another indoor source actually is, you know, Mongolians burn a lot of zor, I don't know how to say it, candles, things like that. And then it would burn a lot and it would come up into very oily dust that sticks to plastic a lot, and then also it's inhaled as well. And if you have a lot of those burning sources, if you do use it, then you must have an air purifier, regardless of which floor you live in, it doesn't really matter. Also, if you're like living on the first or second floor, in most cases, we see that because in the winter, people that have parked outside will start the engine and warm up the car for like 20 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, 5 minutes.
Now all the fume will come inside your home.
Yeah, exactly. So in that time, there's still a lot of pollutants coming out of the car, and that would also be very detrimental to your health if you live on the first or second floors. And so that's why we advise parents to also turn off the engines when they get their kids to school. So when they're taking their kids out of the car and into the school, the smoke that's coming out of the car is most likely to enter through the open doors that are swinging when, you know, children come inside. And then if the ventilation, if the building is not good enough, then it would just, you know, cause a lot of issues for children's health.
Okay, so our time is unfortunately coming to an end soon. Could you tell us what Airee Felt is planning in the future to achieve and to create? Yeah, with Airee, we want to change everything that we're consuming. So starting with air and water. So why do we have to keep getting sick in buildings? We don't want that to be an issue. People are getting bald just by showering because of the water. So we want to change that as well. And the others I will go into later, but our nearest goal is to release our few products and export them and see how they do in other markets, and try to develop the wool so that it becomes an export product as a filter. And in the long term, we don't, in our vision, actually, in our long-term vision, we don't see our air purifier device in it. Our main belief is that we want buildings and cars and any type of indoor system to just have clean air and clean water, just as I'm living, and without a care in the world and without unnecessary a thought about, you know, I don't want to think about air pollution when I'm indoors. I just want to be breathing clean air and not having headaches and not having dry eyes, you know, like that's the goal that we want to reach. So thanks a lot, Ariunfelt, for introducing your startup to us. And this is a very environmentally friendly, innovative product that you're making. And on the behalf of our audience and also everyone at MNB World, I wish lots of luck in Airee Felt's future.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
You've watched Sightline. Today we spoke with Ms. Ariunfelt, CEO of Airee Felt. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.